How long is this gonna go on?
So now we are at Dusty Desert, and it's the first of 2 Sonic and Elise levels. Sonic carries Elise in his arms, and the only abilities you can use are the homing attack and anti-gravity. Everything else is off limits. What these levels do give you is the power to summon this energy barrier which keeps you from sinking into the quicksand. Which is neat, I guess. But that doesn't make up for the restrictions of your other abilities. They could have made up for that if, say, the barrier also increased your speed and damage, or destroyed any enemy that came into contact with it. But alas, all it ever does is protect you from quicksand and swampy water. Sonic's gameplay is nerfed without any compensation, and because of that, I'm not the biggest fan of this gimmick. What I am a big fan of, however, is the incredible level design of Dusty Desert. One aspect of Sonic 06's level design is that levels can branch out quite a bit, much to the degree of the Genesis games. Dusty Desert is an example of this. I mean, look at all these branching paths you can take, and each of them are a joy to take with their own interesting and fun surfaces to run and platform on. It really feels like a huge sprawling environment. The enemies, hazards, and shortcuts are also really well placed. I love how this one combat section might seem like it'd be mandatory, but you can easily bypass it with a well-timed lightspeed dash. It's not that hard to pull off, but it's satisfying. Dusty Desert is a really good and replayable level. Too bad it's followed by 2 particularly horrible moments. First of which being this Sun Elise cutscene. I'll save my piece for why these scenes and this romance as a whole are horrible later on, but needless to say, the writing here is...
I'm sorry. It's all my fault.
Smile. Your smile. That's all I need.
pretty bad. It's so bad that it's almost entertaining. In the words of Scott Pilgrim creator Brian Lee O'Malley, I think the Sonic and Elise relationship is so cringe that it warps space and time and becomes something beautiful and spiritual. But you know what isn't beautiful or spiritual at all? The fucking boss fight with the new kid, Silver the Hedgehog.
I've been looking for you. You're the Iblis Trigger.
This fight lives in infamy as potentially being one of the worst bosses in a 3D Sonic game, if not the worst. Simply put, the fight plays out like a game of cat and mouse, where he'll try chasing you down. You don't want to hit him while he's chasing you, since he'll grab you and slam you against the wall, damaging you. You'll have to wait until he stops and starts levitating objects, then you can hit him. Problem is, you're not clued into doing this. There's no telegraphing, so you won't know that attacking him in certain states is detrimental. Also, like most other bosses, the camera doesn't focus on him, which makes the fight a tedious juggling act of controlling the camera and trying to avoid him. Otherwise, your best way to know when to attack is to wait for the audio cue, which certainly isn't problematic for deaf people. He can also stun lock you, so that's fun. So the fight is a pain in the ass if you don't know what you're doing. But even if you do know what you're doing, it's still a shit boss. He never changes up his strategy or uses new attacks, so it becomes this easy and repetitious bore of a fight. Add on poor programming and infamous line delivery.
Take this! It's no use! Take this! It's no use! Take this! How about this? Take this!
And you have a hilarious train wreck of a fight. This would serve as a damaging introduction to what should have been the cool new Hedgehog character. Sonic kicks his ass, then Silver hits Sonic with a
surprise, motherfucker.
Then Elise gets kidnapped again. Then Sonic continues to get the shit kicked out of him until Amy steps in and tells Silver to fuck off. Well, she doesn't say that exactly, but you get the picture. Then Sonic gets away and goes after Elise. Silver's version of this scene has one of the worst pieces of dialogue to come out of Amy's mouth, period.
In the near future, his actions will cause the devastation of my world. So I must!
No! I don't believe it. Even if that was true. If I had to choose between the world and Sonic, I would choose Sonic.
The fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, this should be self-explanatory. A better way to have handled this would have been to have Amy question Silver on his beliefs, and maybe try to reason with him, have her explain that killing random people he doesn't know is wrong, while also making him understand the concept of innocent until proven guilty. But nah, she just gives out this stupid fucking argument instead, highlighting her Sonic obsession, and it assassinates her character for the rest of the game. It should also be noted that one of the reasons she likes Sonic is because he's a hero. If he were to one day turn evil, cause havoc, and harm innocent people, then she'd lose that admiration and maybe try and even help to take him down. Or, at the very least, try and get him back into his senses. Also, she was great in the adventure games because there was more to her character than being a Sonic-obsessed fangirl. She developed into being independent and defending herself. She was compassionate and helped those in need. She even reasoned with those who were being unreasonable. Then this game reduces her to a Sonic fangirl as her main personality, and that's just stupid! There's this one cutscene where Elise and Amy are talking about their male love interests, which already feels like something out of a bad anime. But then there's also the fact that they're obviously talking about the same person, and now it really feels like something out of a bad anime. Well, I do like how they attempted to give her and Silver a cute little friendship. Too bad that gets shot in the foot later on. I like that she saves and defends Sonic for once, so that's one step forward for her character. Too bad everything else is 2 steps back. Since we just fought Silver, I think we may as well talk about him for a little bit. If that boss fight wasn't enough to sour his reputation, then his gameplay certainly is. Silver is a character with so much potential, only for that potential to be kicked in the head. The power of psychokinesis can present fun concepts for mobility, level design, and combat, but the most it ever gets out of it is combat. I did find satisfaction in picking up enemies and slamming them into other enemies, or picking up projectiles and using them as ammunition of my own, but eventually stagnation kicks in very soon, and it becomes so fucking dull, because every enemy interaction is basically the same, since you really only have one method of attack. Doesn't help that the combat is clunky because of how awful the physics are, and this is what you're doing throughout most of his levels. Goodness gracious, at least give Silver other moves, like an energy projectile and a homing attack. He's also really damn slow too, which makes traversing the hub worlds a complete nightmare sometimes. Oh geez, I went through this long, slow run just to get to the wrong area. Looks like I have to go all the way over there. You can use his abilities to cheat a lot of the level design, which can be amusing to an extent. As far as how the level design uses his telekinetic abilities, the coolest it ever gets are these pendulums in Kingdom Valley. I found that to be neat. I like the bits where you have to knock over objects to create platforms to jump on. Aside from those, you have these parts where Silver just levitates platforms for you to do some clicky platforming on. Woo woo woo! Woo 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 woo! But then you have the fucking notorious ball puzzle. Going into this, I've heard horror stories, and it certainly lives up to them. Simply put, trying to guide the ball into its designated hole is a complete nightmare of human frustration. Your only means of moving the ball is through Silver's stupid-ass pimp slap, in which it's very easy to overshoot it. With how inconsistent the physics are and how fucking sensitive the ball is, it will always either fall into the bottomless pit or collide with the boxes and blow the hell up. Trying to beat this section legitimately was nothing but fertility. I meant futility, not fertility. My bad. Those are like 2 different things. As eventually I resorted to clipping through the door to get to the goal. If using a glitch is a more tolerable way of beating a level than, well, you know, actually playing the game as intended, then that's a failure on the game's front. What makes this worse is that some of the cutscenes show Silver doing cool things with his powers, making you think that he'd play like a psychokinetic badass, only for his gameplay to be a clunky mess and slow as a snail. I do think it's worth mentioning that while fighting Silver as Sonic is a poorly designed game of cat and mouse, fighting Sonic as Silver is a complete fucking joke, and a funny one at that. Holy moly, this dude doesn't have a chance. He's just getting slammed by all that Greek furniture.
Oh, shit! They jumping me! They jumping me!
Silver's campaign also has contenders for both the best and worst Amigo characters in the game. Amy moves way too slow. Her only way to fight is with this close range attack that deals a lot of damage, but it's hard to use because its hitbox is so short. Either I'm not close enough and I end up being target practice for the bad guys, or I'm too close and I take damage. Combat with Amy is a real pain in the ass. Her double jump is garbage, and her invisibility move is so useless I forgot about it during the recording session. Amy is just not at all fun to play as in this game. Of all the characters we looked at, so far she's the worst. Blaze, on the other hand, is at the very least the best Amigo character. I do take joy in that fact, being that I absolutely adore this character. I also find it interesting that this game shows us how she handles in the adventure playstyle, since she did have her playable debut in a boost game. She controls elegantly and smoothly, and her moves for both combat and traversal work so good. In many ways, she almost plays better than Sonic does. Almost. Though, Sonic has way more moves. Also, Blaze's homing attack is a bit weird to get used to. I think Silver's campaign would have been more enjoyable if his levels had you switching between Silver and Blaze in every level of his. Instead, we only play as her 3 different times. At least one of these 3 times, she has an entire level to herself. So, that's nice. With the exceptions of the parts where you play as Blaze, Silver's campaign from a gameplay standpoint fails. With that, as well as having debuted in this game, it's safe to say that for a time, his reputation wasn't the best. Though with the past 15 years that this game has been out, he has more or less become a fan favorite. I personally really like him a lot as a character, and I like the idea behind his character arc.
I also love his character design. It really has that futuristic feel to it, which makes sense since he's from, well, the future.
Living in the destroyed future, he spent his whole life fighting the very demon that destroyed his world. He is determined and hopeful, but he also struggles with having hope, and beats himself up over the situation that he has a hard time having control over. It's a good setup for his motivation, and it can be relatable if you look at it as a metaphor for how some of us struggle with certain things in our life. Granted, that probably wasn't what the writers intended, but a lot of storytelling can be reinterpreted as a metaphor of some kind. Despite his serious intentions, he still is quite a dork, and I do love that about him. Though the game never overplays that aspect of him and makes him a complete dumbass, which is good, though I'm pretty sure that would have been the case if Pontac were writing this. I do really love the whole friendship between Blaze and Silver and how they show concern over each other while also working together as a team. Though I do feel like this could have been taken further than it was. It still works. I love how whenever he ends up in the past, he's simply amazed by these basic environments, finding the beauty in them simply because he spent his entire life in a hellscape. To him, this is a breath of fresh air. It adds an aspect of depth to his character by presenting an attention to detail. It also adds to his motivation by showing him what he's fighting for.
This world was devastated before I was born. A harsh, bleak place where we live in eternal darkness. Life is a struggle, and people live without hope. How did this happen? No one will answer me directly. This looks so beautiful.
What? You mean this desert?
Everything is so great here, isn't it? The sky is gorgeous and everyone's happy.
Huh?
Let's go. I'll help you find what you're looking for.
So yeah, I like a lot of the aspects of Silver's story, as well as the idea behind his arc, and for the most part how it plays out. But there are aspects of it that I find to be sloppy, one of them being the fact that Blaze is here. This contradicts with her presence in Sonic Rush, as there she's from another dimension, whereas here she's from Sonic's future. This is hard to go into, especially since there's no definitive answer. This is a big problem with many things in 06's plot, such as how Iblis works or the fucking time travel. With Blaze, there are many theories, such as she was flung from her dimension into the desolate future of Sonic's dimension, or she was reborn in the Soul dimension after sacrificing herself to destroy Iblis. I don't know, going into the logistics of these theories is enough to give me a stroke. So I'm going to plug this video. She doesn't do much in Silver's story outside of moral support and sacrificing herself at the very end, but the latter of which I'm saving for later discussion. She could have done more in the plot. Also, her and Silver's bond could have been taken further, aside from the few moments where it's put on display. At the beginning of Silver's story, they run into Mephiles. He tells them that Sonic is the cause of the apocalypse, and sends them back in time to kill Sonic. But it's so obviously a deception based on the way the game portrays Mephiles in a very evil manner, with his dark and brooding speech and eerie music. For one, it would make it hard to understand why Silver would believe anything he says, so it's reasonable for some to see Silver as a cotton-headed ninny-muggins because of this. But from Silver's perspective, he's so desperate to make things better that obviously he's gonna take any opportunity that he could potentially to do that. But for the audience's sake, this could have been presented way better. The scene where Amy confronts Silver when he's attacking Sonic is supposed to be a point of challenge in Silver's arc, where he begins to question his own actions and what's really right or wrong. But of course, Amy's argument could have been way better, especially since it's supposed to be where the purpose of Silver's objective is challenged. The scene after that has Silver contemplating whether or not it's right or wrong to kill someone for the greater good. People have scoffed at the very idea of this being subject matter in a Sonic game, but it's not like the series hasn't reached into deeper subject matter beforehand. In fact, I miss when Sonic stories had this kind of stuff. I think here it works well as a means of setting up Silver's dilemma, and how he goes about handling it with the way he tries to come up with an alternative for dealing with the situation. From this point forward, the way a story develops is solid in my opinion, but for now, we gotta get back to Sonic's campaign for a bit. So in between the Silver boss and our next stage, White Acropolis, we have a few cutscenes and a whole lot of filler to get through. Some of this filler being 2 mandatory combat missions. So now is a good time to talk about combat, specifically Sonic's combat.
Take a shot every time I say combat, you'll be sure to die.
As we know by now, Hero started this trend with 3D Sonic games experimenting with combat, a trend that would end with Black Knight. Though it's said that Sonic Frontiers will experiment with combat again, and I do hope that pans out well. But basically, every game in the 2010s would more or less drop combat as a specific focus.
Lies, 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 lies! Oh, you're fucking someone!
Okay, again, what the hell was that? Anyways, with Heroes in Shadow, you had gimmicks and mechanics that justified the presence of combat. 06 does this to some degree. Every character has their own unique way of fighting enemies, which does help to keep things fresh, but it's definitely overall a mixed bag. Sonic's combat can be held back by how much delay the homing attack can have. That's not exactly bad for enemies that take one hit to kill, but with big enemies with health bars, however, that can really slog down the pace. But this issue is countered because by the time big enemies show up, you unlock anti-gravity, which drains health bars with ease. Eventually you unlock the bounce attack, which shreds enemies' health bars like it's no one's business. It is satisfying to destroy enemies with the way they ragdoll and explode into pieces, and the sound design helps further that. It should be noted that enemies do fight back, so you do have to kind of be careful. There are also many arcade-like elements to the combat that make it more fun, like how some groups of robots have a leader, and if you destroy that leader, every robot in the group blows up. Or how you have rare instances of environmental mechanics that destroy enemies, which helps to make the combat feel more tangible. Another thing that I feel helps combat is the enemy design. Well, specifically the Eggman mechs. I'm mixed on the designs for the Iblis and Mephiles monsters, but the mechs have this sleek and cool designs that make trashing them all the more fun. Also, I can't be the only one that was reminded of these mechs when I saw the drones that Sonic fought in the Sonic movie. I mean, just look at them.
Okay, so post-editor's note. I just now remembered that Jeff Fowler, who directed the Sonic movie, also did work on Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06, and, I believe, one of the things it helped with was, the mech designs and all that stuff. And so it kind of, makes sense as to why the drones and, the Sonic movie kind of look like the 06 robots. I just thought that was a little bit neat little thing to throw in there. Yeah. Anyways.
Okay, so to be real, aside from these things, combat is still pretty shallow and can be repetitive, and with how clunky it can feel, that doesn't help. But I still find amusement out of it. One thing I appreciate about the combat is how in Sonic's main levels, it's never really overbearing. I mean, you have those few combat rooms where you have to fight in order to progress, and that stuff is pace-breaking and unnecessary, but aside from that, combat is balanced well with the platforming. It's not like Pac-Man World 3 where it has too much dominance over the platforming to a point where it almost ruins the level design. But, would I have preferred the game not have a combat focus? Maybe. This game was structured after the adventure games, and those games never really had that much of a combat focus. Every enemy went down with one hit, but it's obvious why enemies with health bars are a thing in this game. It's justified gameplay for these two. The subject matter of combat in Sonic games is something I have mixed opinions on. At the end of the day, it's about that vision and how the game executes said vision. During this period of transition, we run into Knuckles, who was tasked by Eggman to deliver a transmission to Sonic. And here is where we talk about Knuckles' narrative presence. And by that, I mean how there's next to none. He serves zero purpose in the plot outside of delivering exposition, and him and Ruse bitching at each other. It's by this point that the writers didn't know what to do with him, and just threw him in the games out of obligation. I guess a problem with having so many damn characters in one story is that you're gonna have trouble knowing what to do with them. What's even worse here is that this is the point in which they begin to start writing him like a dumbass joke, which will unfortunately progress into several of the games afterwards. Thank goodness for Sonic Movie 2 finally making him an opposing badass with a purpose once again. Oh, Knuckles! Knuckles! Oh shit! Oh shit!
You look like I need your power.
Oh! So Sonic received the transmission from Eggman, telling him to meet him at the White Acropolis to give him the Chaos Emerald, and that he'll get the princess back in exchange.
It's most definitely a trap. I don't think Eggman will honor his agreement.
I'm going.
Sonic?
Since Eggman went to the trouble of telling me where Elise is, I think I should thank him personally.
Yeah, let's see how well that works out for you, buddy. So our next level is White Acropolis. The first section introduces Sonic's final alternative playstyle, snowboarding. This is yet another mechanic ripped straight out of the adventure games, and like a lot of things this game takes from the adventure titles, it's quite a downgrade. What was a fun and cool set piece where you jump off of ramps to pull off tricks, collect items, and gain speed is now a dumpster fire where jumping is delayed and collision is jank with how easy it is to get stuck in certain spots. I already mentioned how bad the physics are before, but these segments exemplify that just by how awkward everything feels, especially when you're jumping off of ramps, though what's funny is that most of these ramps don't even work properly. Also, just like with the Mach Speed sections, you can't control your aerial movement, which adds to the awkwardness of the controls. I also feel that the jagged and claustrophobic layout here doesn't gel well with the controls, especially with certain cheap hazard and pit placements.
Now I have gotten used to the quirks of these snowboard controls, and can get past the section just fine.
But it does not feel good to go through, though I do like the idea behind the set piece, with it having Sonic snowboarding his way into Eggman's base. It's a very stylish and in-character thing for Sonic to do. One thing I like about the entire level is the cold and robotic atmosphere that's pushed further with the lovely music in both acts. The second act of the stage is a thoroughly decent platforming affair. There are certain parts I do quite like, such as the curving road, which has a nice little shortcut in the form of a homing attack chain that leads to a rainbow hoop. The Tails section of the stage is pretty decently designed, but Tails is still whack as hell to play as, so yeah. I do like how the level gets very wide open to where you have multiple ways to get to the goal. Enemies are placed well in the right amount of spots to keep the player engagement high, and the item capsules are placed on the side to encourage and reward exploration. I also like that there are elevations in the ground that keep the environment from feeling too flat, and the different shortcuts you can take are pretty fun too. Aside from the shitty snowboard, this is yet another good stage. Though with this particular one, I feel that it would have been even better being able to go through it with controls that weren't slow and restrictive, but rather fast and fluid, being able to take advantage of the spin dash by taking shortcuts and just speeding through this big environment. That would be nice, but it is what it is. It's still a decent stage though. Sonic and friends come face to face with Eggman, with Sonic handing over the Emerald. But Eggman being Eggman, this is actually a trap, where he uses the emerald to power a machine that sends Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles into another point in time.
Ah yes, making the characters fall for what is basically an obvious trap. A classic case of contrived plot progression. But you know what they didn't bother to contrive?
That's a Chaos Emerald.
Hey, isn't that the same blue Chaos Emerald that Sonic handed to Eggman? Why is it here? Oh, well, that's strange. Anyways.
So our main trio is sent into a future drowned in damnation, to which they cross paths with Shadow and Rouge, who were also banished here. Once again, I'll talk about that later. So they need to find 2 Chaos Emeralds in order to induce Chaos Control and travel back into their point in time. This leads into the next 2 levels we'll have to go through back to back, starting with Crisis City. Boy, do I love some Crisis City! One of 06's most iconic levels, and for a good reason. Thematically, it's a badass level, with it being a destroyed city with flames all over the place, fiery demons everywhere, and a flaming tornado tearing through. Though I won't deny that the Generations remake of the level is probably better, but one thing it doesn't have are some of the set pieces you have here. You start off riding a board down a road, dodging explosions and Iblis monsters, then traversing the remnants of structures and highways, being launched from building to building, platforming on the debris, being carried by strong winds, and then running away from a flaming tornado at high speeds and dodging the debris. And you go through all of this while one of the most intense music tracks in the game plays during the level. And it's kind of funny how despite the shit I gave the snowboarding section with Acropolis, I don't mind it as much here. Really, the level design here works so much better with it. It's a lot less cramped, and the hazards are placed and telegraphed well. There are rails you can hop on, as well as higher roads you can take, which adds more layers to the section. The snowboarding gameplay is still kinda messy, but Crisis City tries to make it work. And it's a good set piece. The entire mid portion of the level expands off of that fusion of SA1 and SA2 level design, with really good reaction-focused platforming and instances where the level branches out and gives you options on approaching it. The whole hellscape aesthetic leads to some really fun moments in terms of gameplay and spectacle. Speaking of which, there's a good amount of balance of spectacle and player input. It can feel a bit automated, as is usual with those 6 levels to an extent, but these moments of automation are brief, and you still have a good amount of control when choosing pathways or changing course. Also, the scripted sections in this level might be some of the most visually stunning in the game. Of course, Crisis City isn't perfect, and being that this is Sonic 06, there's a catch. This particular bit right here is not completely automated, and if you tilt the stick before Sonic lands on the rail, he might move and miss the rail, leading to a frustrating death. Some people might not know this, and it is not a good thing. This rail grinding bit is kinda awkward due to not having proper rail switching. Can't go without mentioning the Mach speed section, which is bullshit as usual. It throws so much shit at you, which wouldn't be too bad if I could control my direction while I'm in the air, but it is what it is. It's still manageable, and it's definitely not the worst Mach speed section. However, it's still annoying, but even then, I still have to admit, it looks awesome as hell with the debris flying everywhere and the fiery tornado chasing Sonic down. So far, this is the best level we've looked at. One awkward interaction with Rouge and Knuckles later, and we are now at Flame Core. There are many things in this level that annoy me. There are these fireballs at the very beginning that come at you with no warning, and they can hit at random spots. Needless to say, that's cheap and aggravating, but it's really only relevant in the beginning. There's also the few wall running segments which can be finicky sometimes. There's also a part where you have to play as Knuckles, and he sucks! In this game, his gliding is way too heavy, his melee combat feels bad to use, his ground pound is too floaty, and he's notorious for sticking onto the wall. At least his segment here is short. Also, the doors move way too slow. So, Flame Core has stuff that annoys me, but I still can't help but love it. Why exactly? Well, look at this!
Woohoo! What a view!
The atmosphere is so badass, it's so raw. It had that same energy permeating through the adventure titles. Well, that is the case with most of this game, but especially with this level. It feels like something straight out of Adventure. The music also helps with this, but I'll talk about the soundtrack as a whole later on. There are other details I love, like how there are multiple times you get a view of the volcano, and as you get further and further into the first section, the closer you are to it until you take a dash ramp and launch yourself into the volcano, which is ridiculously cool. The outside section has this high energy action sort of feel, the kind that says, let's get this shit done. The section that takes place inside the volcano has a more calm, collected, and a bit more of a somber vibe to it, but still has that let's get it done energy. Also, the aesthetic in the second half may probably be my favorite in the game, with its occasional use of purples as well as the brightness of the lava that contrasts with the terrain's darker texture. All this combined makes for an intense yet pretty environment and helps to create that atmosphere. While there are some parts of the design that I do not like, I think the overall level layout is solid, with good use of alternate paths and some fun platforming to be had. It does have its flaws, but its good parts make it one of my favorites in the game. At the very least, a top 5 contender for me.
I found a Chaos Emerald.
Don't touch it!
What? What's this?
How will the blue blur and his pals get out of this one? That's a question to answer for another day. And so that wraps up part 2 of this review. Next time we will be covering Shadow's gameplay, the rest of Sonic's levels, and several other things. Until then, I will see you all later.